feel a little funny right now, but I'll be okay. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. This is the Germantown Planning Commission. This is our meeting for October. Appreciate your patience. We're running a few minutes late. We're having to run some copies of the agenda, so as soon as we get back with those, so that you'll have a copy of the agenda, we'll move forward. Thank you. Mr. Ross, are you ready? Again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I was afraid there for a minute that we were going to have to ask Alderman Owens to do a little song and dance for us, but fortunately we got the agendas here just in the nick of time. If we could have the roll called, please.
Mr. Saunders?
Here.
Ms. Hicks?
Here.
Mr. Bennett?
Here.
Alderman Owens?
Here.
Chairman Harless?
Here, and we do have a quorum for tonight. Again, there are copies of the agenda here on the front table if anyone would like it. It's also on the screen if you'd like to look up at the screen. I need to let everyone know there have been some modifications to the current agenda. The first item on the agenda, which is the Old Fort Greene subdivision, will be going to consent. Item number C has been withdrawn by the applicant. Item number E has been withdrawn by the applicant. And item number F will also be going to consent. So we have a couple of items on the consent agenda. And those, again, I'll read them to you. It's item A and item E. F, I'm sorry, item F, okay. Is there anyone present, either in the commission or in the audience, who wishes to have one of these items removed from the consent agenda and presented in its entirety? Seeing none, hearing none, we will continue forward. As part of the consent agenda items, these items will not be presented, discussed, or voted upon individually. Again, if you'd like to have them discussed before the Planning Commission, please come forward and let us know. Seeing no one that comes forward, I would like to note that all matters concerning the consent agenda, the vote of each member of the Planning Commission will constitute an acknowledgement that the member has read the application or proposal, the staff reports, and the subcommittee report. I'm prepared to make a motion for approval on the consent agenda. Alderman Owens.
The minutes prior to consent.
Thank you.
No problem.
Alderman Owens mentioned that we need to get approval for last month's minutes. If I could have a motion, or is there any additions, subtractions to the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Chairman Harless?
Yes, and the minutes from last meeting are approved. We will now go back to the consent agenda. Alderman Owens, do you?
Sorry, yes. Yeah, I need to, based on the consent agenda, I work at, as you know, at ETI Corporation and did some work on item B, which is the Maplewood Gates, and so I'll be abstaining from that particular item.
Thank you. Maplewood Gates is not on the consent agenda. It's item A and item F. So with that,
approve the consent agenda.
we have a motion to approve the consent agenda
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? Sir?
As we discussed in executive session, item 4A, the condition number 5 under planning about the public access agreement, that condition has been removed. So that is also part of the approval for that item.
So if you'll make a note that to remove condition number 5. Is that correct? Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Ms. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Chairman Harless?
Yes, and the consent agenda is approved. Moving forward, we go to item number B. Do we have a presentation from staff?
Thank you, Chairman Harless.
Is everyone awake? Okay. Do we have a presentation from staff? Please note that Alderman Owens is recusing himself from this item.
Okay, pardon the interruption. Item number 4B is the Maplewood Plan Development and an application for subdivision entrance gates. Maplewood subdivision was originally approved by the Planning Commission in July of 2013 and approved by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen subsequently thereafter. The development concept plan reduced the front yard setbacks. Developer also provided for the eventual installation of gates at each entrance. However, the plan that was presented for approval to the Planning Commission in 2013 did not include any gates, and the Planning Commission did not expressly approve gates at that time. With the approval of the plan development, the Planning Commission stated in 2013 that should the developer or the HOA propose installations of the gate, that request and the plans associated with it would require additional approval from the Planning Commission. The applicant is proposing to install unmanned gates at both entrances, the north entrance and the south entrance to Maplewood. Minimum standards as outlined in the private streets policy are that secondary access must be granted. There are 2 entrances, that emergency access must be available, and that all unmanned gates are equipped with at least 2 emergency access devices, and they have met that standard. That placement and turnaround is addressed as part of their application, and the placement of the call boxes has been put approximately 72 feet from the improved section of Forest Hill Irene Road, and a turnaround has been provided for in this area on the north side of the southern gate in order for anyone turned away at this call box to be able to back up in and pull away if they are turned away at the gate. These gates, ingress opens inwardly, egress opens outwardly as called for by the fire department. And in terms of the north gate, this becomes a residence-only gate as part of the proposal that was considered by the subcommittee on September 19th. This gate will not have a call box associated with it, but will have the appropriate emergency entrance features with a Knox box and siren equipped opening options for the fire department. And it will also have either a scan or a click option for residents to be able to pull up to the gate and enter in a free flow fashion from Forest Hill Irene. This is an elevation view of the gates, a little bit closer view. This is more in the purview of the Design Review Commission, but so that you get a full picture of what the gate approval would be as it moves forward to the Design Review Commission, this was included as part of your packet. At this point, what I'd like to add is that the Homeowners Association will be modifying their covenants upon approval of this by both the Planning Commission and the Design Review Commission to require guest codes be given out, that homeowners that have gatherings at their homes with 10 or more people will alert the Homeowners Association so that the guest codes can either be distributed or the gates can remain open for the period of time of the gathering at whatever residence that is, and that the Homeowners Association is also committed to leaving the gates open during standard construction hours after the installation of the gates, for a period of 18 months or whenever the last home is fully constructed within the development, whatever occurs first. This would allow the gates to be open from approximately 6 a.m. to 7 or 8 p.m. so that there could be free flow for builders and their associated subcontractors to work without the gates being a hindrance to activity and entrance as it relates to the construction going on within this subdivision. The applicant is here and is ready to speak on any of these items if the commission would like to hear
Thank
from
you,
him.
Mr. Ross. Commissioners, do you have any questions? If not, would the applicant like to make a presentation? If you'd state your name and address for the record, please.
Brett Schubert, 9073 Winston Woods Circle South in the Maplewood development. I'm here on behalf of the Homeowners Association. Mr. Duke is here on behalf of Shaw's Creek, the owner of the road area now and the developer, and also our engineer from ETI is here. And I know I'm glad that we continued this at the request of staff for 30 more days from the first subcommittee meeting to continue to try to get this just exactly perfect. And I think we've been able to make some modifications to this to take anything out of the way that could potentially cause a hiccup. As you heard on the church entrance, there's a bit of a hill there, and I think some members of the church are here today. We have that as a residence only, which should allow free flow of traffic without any backup, any call box there. And then the installation of the hammerhead turnaround and backing up the call block 72 feet from the improved right-of-way line is 12 feet past the improved right-of-way now meets the codes, not a waiver requested any longer. And we don't know exactly what Forest Hill is going to be in the future. I think Mr. Gwaltney and our discussions were perhaps that a bike lane and a walking lane maybe 7 feet. So even if that occurred, we would still at 12 feet over be 5 feet more than what would require a waiver. So we've tried to adequately position this thing backward to meet all of the requirements, and through 2 planning commission subcommittees, I think we've got there. So unless the committee has anything further for me, question-wise, clarification-wise, that's
Thank
all
you.
we have.
Commissioners, questions for the applicant?
Yeah, just one question. Is there a concern about security for that particular development? Is that the basis for the
It's funny
request
that
for
you
gates?
it's funny that you actually asked that. Mr. Duke reports, was it last night, that a trailer was broken into, and you get, I think, Germantown's a safe community. I love living in Germantown. That's why I live in Germantown, to be honest. But I think in new developments, you do get some trolling for easy opportunity. I know we've had tools stolen, we've had pool equipment stolen, possibly air conditioners, if I remember right. Mike Murphy's had his air conditioner stolen last night. Again, we had a tool insulation truck or tool truck broken into. So these are the kind of things that I think happen at night and probably are inside jobs. Leaving them open during construction, allows the free flow of traffic for the next 18 months or so, but the ability to close them at night hopefully forecloses these inside jobs, while the construction is going on, and then ultimately just stabilizes or provides for better home values, frankly, in the community, and a little bit of security. I mean, gates are as secure as the people that give out the codes to everybody. So really, I think it's an affluence to the neighborhood. It's a property value thing, and security is on the list, but it's probably not the first thing on the list, if that makes any sense. But yes, there have been multiple thefts.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions? Just a comment before we go to the vote. I'd like to thank the developer for your willingness to work with staff. I know you've had to come before the subcommittee a couple of times, but I think at the end of the day, we've gotten a better result. So that's the way it's supposed to work. So I appreciate you being willing to do that. If
I commend the staff. Cameron came to my office. We went to do plans, and it was fantastic to work with. Chance working with here, so maybe that's a good thing. I agree. Continuing it out and not forcing the vote on something that the planning commission may be, a little bit on to get to a result which is
Hopefully it's a win-win. Mr. Bennett, do we have a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to give the audience a chance to respond. Do we have anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this project? This is speaking in favor of the project. Bear with me for a second. Seeing none, hearing none, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in opposition to this project? If you'll come forward, state your name and address for the record, please. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. I'm Dr. Malhotra, and I've been living in this area for 6 years. My house is right north of this development on the corner.
What is your address, sir?
9078 Forest Hill, Irene Cove. Yeah.
Very good, thank you.
So my concern is I think we're looking for the safety and avoiding the chances of accidents on the Forest Hill Irene, and I think that was the last time we discussed about it. I still feel, and I feel that the space that is there is not enough because of two reasons. What if there is a party in somebody's house there, and you have a 7 o'clock time or 6 o'clock time? I have a very strong feeling that space would not be enough, and they're going to be all the cars stacked, and it's resulting that the traffic will be blocked. Secondly, we're going to have a lot more traffic in that area as the school is opening. There's another school on the south of Poplar, so we're going to have a lot more traffic. Typically when guests come in the party, they forget what the code number is and things of that nature, and it increases the chances of accidents. Also, as far as the safety of this place is concerned, I have not heard anything. This is one of the safest places that I ever lived. I've left things outside, nothing is stolen. Of course, Germantown is one of the, I think, 8 or 10 communities in the whole country which was in the news. So I don't think that safety is an issue as that there was a concern. And I think that's pretty much is the concern of other people in that area has spoken to him. One of the trustees of the chapel, which is north of this development, Mr. Wilson, another one of my neighbors, Mr. Yeah, he's also there, and they also agree with this same concept that we had, and we are concerned about the safety of, that area and the road. So,
Thank you, Dr. Malhotra. Is there anyone else? If you'll come forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Anis Kapadia, and I live next to the Chapel Hill, 2615 Forest Hill, Irene Road. My wife grew up in Germantown, and she was a teacher. My mother-in-law retired as a teacher, and Germantown is the best place, and I keep my home unlocked. I don't feel that there is any threat or any robbery in Germantown. I have a store in Germantown which is never broken. I have a store in Cordova which was broken twice, and other stores. So I don't feel that way, and I wouldn't say or blame my city that there is a robbery. If you want to have a gate, I have no problem. My only concern is when I come out of my home and I make a right, or when I go in the morning to the Dogwood Elementary School, it is very hard for me to make left or right. It's very scary. There is a traffic. With this gate, I am concerned about the safety of our neighborhoods, our kids, or everybody. I think year back there was an accident on this road, and somebody had hit the tree, so we have to think about the resident as well. So there has to be a solution which takes care of everybody. But I feel this gate over here, we have not done enough study. We have not looked into the traffic pattern, the count. I would request people to come and look at the traffic, try to come in and out of this Forest Hill Irene before even we put the gate. I have no problem in the gate, but it is going to impact the traffic and other people and will definitely cause a lot more accident.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is James Wilson, address 9232 Wheatland Drive, Germantown, Tennessee. I've been a resident here 27 years. I drive Forest Hill Irene every day. And the property to the north of the subdivision is Taylor Chapel CME Church. I'm a member and a trustee at that church. And we feel as if by putting gates at the entry of this subdivision is a definite hazard. It's a health hazard. There's a hill that you come over when you're coming up the hill going south. When you're coming south on Forest Hill Irene, we at Taylor Chapel, we have 2 driveways, and we have difficulty getting out of our church because of all the traffic that has increased on Forest Hill Irene since they've added Wolf River on the other end. The traffic has increased tenfold. And we feel as if by putting gates there, if anything should happen, that everything will be backed up if someone turns south and they have nowhere to go and people come over the hill. It's a health hazard to us, and as far as driving is concerned. And that's our major concern. We have been in on the ground floor of this since they did Maplewood, and we saw the original documents for it. There were no gates, okay? And we were pleased with that because we know that there's no way for people to back up onto Forest Hill Irene. But we feel as if with the addition of the gates, there will be a hazard as far as traffic is concerned on Forest Hill Irene. And that's our major concern.
Mr. Wilson, thank you for your comments.
Yes, sir.
Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak against this project? Please come forward. Yes, ma'am.
Addie Shelton, 2027 Allenby Road. One of the things I'm a member of Taylor's Chapel CME Church, and the reason I'm speaking is that over across Poplar, we will have a new school, and traffic will be up and down that road, and it's very hazardous. And we are aging adults trying to get out of our church community, and most of the people there are very graying adults. And I want to just bring that to your attention concerning this gate that may back up traffic with all of that. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Mrs. Shelton. I appreciate your comments regarding graying adults, since I am one. I just wish I had some gray. Would the applicant like to respond? Please do.
I asked the members of the church before coming here and tell me they were opposed to this in the parking lot if they had seen our revised plan or would like to look at the revised plan. And they said they didn't care to see it. So they came with the intention to object to this, no matter what, without even seeing the fact that now it's not even a call box there. It's a free flow of traffic that has no concern for the fact that this very small church, I don't know if it's membership, but very small church, but if the board feels that that's a concession, even though I don't think that there's any possible way traffic could back up, we'd leave it open during church hours on Sunday morning. We would consider doing that, but at some point you can't make everybody happy. I know Mr. Malhotra voices a complaint about this development every time something comes in because he feels the city took 14 feet of his property that was right-of-way, and I know that I've heard that he called various members of the community to get them to come and advocate against this because he is not a fan of the development and never will be a fan of the development because it's behind his house. Those are factors that I cannot control, but people that want to come and oppose a plan that they've never seen, never looked at, and have really no way of responding to or how much the gates would back up, the measurements or anything else, is just things that are beyond our control. We thought we've done everything we can to address the free flow of traffic on the entrance there by the church.
Just a question.
Sure.
As I understand it, the gates will not go in until when?
Their intent is to, as we understand it, and this may be a better question for Mr. Schubert and Mr. Duke to answer, but if approved by the Planning Commission this evening, they still have to go to the Design Review Commission for review of the landscape modifications and the gates themselves and how those gates would look. But they came to us initially for the installation of the gates and the call boxes prior to the final asphalt being installed in the Maplewood subdivision, which is one of the things that is on the punch list for final acceptance of this subdivision. These are private streets and private sewer, storm sewer infrastructure within the subdivision, and it was approved that way with private streets in 2013, so the Homeowners Association has been set up to be able to fund the continued operation and maintenance of that infrastructure, including the streets. But they wanted to make sure that the call box and the associated infrastructure with the gate was installed prior to that final asphalt, so the final asphalt wouldn't have to be cut open, installed, and then you'd have an unattractive patch there at the front end.
What about vendors coming in to build houses? Is there any thought that you're going to be leaving the gates open?
That's the 18 months that the homeowners, 18 months or when the last house is built within the subdivision that the HOA is committed to.
So, as I understand it, the HOA is going to leave the gates open for a...
Yes, sir. Everything Cameron said is correct. Sometime in the next 2-3 months or something after design review, we intend to install the gates. We intend to leave those open as a condition of approval for 18 months or so long as the Planning Commission feels comfortable. We personally don't want to hand out the code to every subcontractor, and to leave them open during construction hours would serve that while leaving them closed at night. To prevent the construction thefts that we have been experiencing. But during the day, you do have large pieces of equipment and large things that could back up. And also, we personally don't want to give the code out to every construction worker. So there will be free flow for the next 18 months if that's the approval condition.
Thank you, Mr. Schubert. Sure. Commissioners, other questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, I have one. I believe during the subcommittee meeting, we discussed with the applicant in regard to any time that they may have a function at a resident or residence, that the gate would be left open during that time and it would not be there for someone having to come in and actually gain access to a code. Is that still your intentions at this time?
I will commit that on the record as attorney to do it, and the developer that can unilaterally amend the declaration of covenants, that we will do that to amend, to put in a policy with a fine, you know, so it has some teeth, that I think as Mr. Ross said it, but we're happy either way, that the policy would be anytime anyone anticipates a gathering of 10 or more, we will either, let's say the invitations have to have a temporary code on them, or we will just, you know, that person has to contact me or someone on the board, and we will leave the gates open for a prescribed period of time, a couple of hours or whatever for this event. So I'm happy to have a policy for sure, and I'm committed to do that. If it's what Cameron said, it's either we provide, and the invitations must provide a temporary passcode, or leave them open, I'm happy either way. Either way the board wants to condition that is fine by me.
Chairman, I believe it would be better intended that if you do have a function of that nature, that it is left open due to the fact that code has sometimes doesn't work, you know, and
Sure.
we don't want that backing up.
Or they forget it, the invitation or something of that
and
nature, sure.
Once again, you're leaving it open and either 18 months or until the last house is completed during the day from 6 till 7, something like that, just for construction purposes, and then it'll be closed at night for the residents to have access to it. Is that correct?
Either one. We proposed 18 months. I think Cameron said the 18 months or the later of when the, I don't know if it was the last slab's poured or the last house is finished, or whatever the mark the committee's fine with. I mean, we hope at the rate that it's going that it'll be fully built out in 18 months, but
Hopefully you will be and have them all sold, but in the event they are, I would think it would be apropos to leave the gates open while you still have equipment and subcontractors coming in, even at the last
agree.
house. Yeah. Unfortunately, that opens up your subdivision, but then again, construction has its problems also.
Well, we can pick a mark. It's the later of 8 or the earlier, maybe 18 months or the final certificate of occupancy is.
I think that's reasonable there. I think it would.
Would you come up to the microphone, please, sir, and state your name and address?
I'm sorry, I'm John Duke. I'm the developer at 985 Reddick Cove, Memphis, Tennessee is my office. Yes, we can just make the amendment to it that we will set up in the Homeowners Association documents that anytime there's a house under construction, the gates will be left open during construction hours. And that way we won't have any problem. And also during a party of 10 or more, we will make it a bylaw that you have to have the gates open. They have to notify us a week in advance that they're having a party, and we will schedule to have the gates open during that party. There's always free access out, so we'll have the entry gate open for them to come in during the party.
Mr. Duke, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, other questions?
I don't know if it's so much a question as a comment, and that is in regard to the gates. I think one of the comments Mr. Schubert made was, the gates will allow increase the property values in the subdivision. Quite frankly, vast majority of the homes in this town are not behind gates, and we don't have an issue with property values. Mr. Duke is an excellent developer and builder, and he's built a whole bunch of those homes that are not behind gates, that have sold very well and retain their property values very well. I just don't see the need in gates in the city of Germantown. I just think it's we're an inclusive community, and it's a walkable community, and I think the gates destroy that whole aspect of the city. I just don't see the need in them. So I just, unless you can show that there's a need for the gates, I just can't support gates. And other than you think it's going to increase your property values, I don't think you need gates for the property values in that subdivision to increase. You have Forest Hill Irene Cove next to you. You've got Grove Forest Cove down the street. You've got Forest Hill Lane. You've got Orleans Walk. All those are homes in the same price range, and on Forest Lane, actually in a higher price range than what you folks have in your subdivision. None of those are gated. I don't see the property values dwindling because somehow they're not behind gates. So I don't buy that you need a gate to increase your property value. Maybe it makes you feel better about it. I don't know. That's just me, okay? And I'm not saying, you're right or wrong about that. I just haven't, and to me, it's just inherent, opposition to them unless I can see a value that it serves either the community which the subdivision's in or the subdivision itself. I don't see that here. I do see there's some problems with the traffic, at least till the road gets completely widened on Forest Hill Irene, particularly your North Drive. I think there's going to be the possibility of backup. I understand that you guys have made some concessions, and we appreciate that, and where you've put the call boxes, and on that particular drive, you don't have a call box at all. It's just going to be a remote access. You pull up, and the gate opens just for the residents, and I think that's going to help. I heard some of the residents talk about worried about traffic. I think that particular function that the homeowners agreed to do and install is going to help the traffic on that particular gate entrance. It's not as much a queuing space over there, but I think that function will more than compensate for that. I still think there's going to be some issues, there always are, on gated subdivisions. They're just inherently, you got somebody trying to pull in the UPS guy, next thing you know, you got a traffic backup. It just happens with gated subdivisions. Yours is not going to be any differently as we go along. So to me, I just have an issue with that, and I can't support this particular application. So.
I don't have a study on property values or something. Where that comes from, or the tangible to me of that is my wife and I moved here a year and a half ago from the Enclave subdivision. And we had a lot of transplants and people that would come view the house and get there or something from out of town. And it must have been 3 or 4 showings that people walked and said, oh, we only want a gated community. We're looking for a gated community. We're going to go look at Glen Alden or the other developments on Forest Hill or something. And so we had that response to a number of showings about 1.5 years ago in the community. So it doesn't hurt values, let's put it that way. In my opinion, does it help? I don't know. But I know that it would have given us 3 or 4 potential buyers had the enclave. But that's such a densely developed subdivision compared to this one. It'd be hard to gate that one. But that's where my personal view on that came from.
Thank you,
Can I
Mr.
say
Schubert.
one
Mr. Duke.
thing? I just want to say that I didn't care one way or the other, obviously. I mean, I lived in Gwen Hollow Cove over off Johnson Road for 15 years and did have my house broken into by Bigfoot, kicked it in, and I had 2 minutes. The cops were there in 2 minutes. So I love Germantown, love building here, love being here. 34 homeowners in this subdivision, it was unanimous. They all want the gates. So I just said, hey, if y'all want the gates, I've prepared it for the gates, and we'll apply for it. And so kind of the will of the people, they want the gates, and that's why we're here. And so I debate whether I think they're good or bad or whatever, but we would like to have them open during construction and make it as easy and you know, where it's not a problem as much as possible. I appreciate your consideration and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duke. Commissioners?
One comment, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the neighbors being here, and you raised a lot of valid points. Some of them we discussed even in subcommittee. One of them was the queuing. Could staff talk about the road improvement and how that could help with the road and people getting past if there were 1 or 2 cars in line?
Mr. Watney.
I say gentle with that, Mr. Watney.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Hicks. The segment of Forest Hill north of Poplar to Wolf River Boulevard is in the city's long-range CIP program or capital improvements program for a widening project, not a full-blown 4-lane median divided urban cross-section like being built south of Poplar Pike, but more of a safety improvement project, which includes adding a center turn lane from Forest Hill Lane to approximately Farmore. Once you get beyond Farmore, it's already improved for the most part. As far as the scheduling goes, we have proposed the design of that in our fiscal year 21 and construction in 22. And I caution you to say it, when I say proposed, it's going to be competing against other projects with limited funding. But again, the city is aware that it's a needed project, and we, again, will be requesting funding for it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Certainly. Mr. Quatton, just real quick. I know the plans probably hasn't been developed yet, but is there any, and I do go along Forest Hill Irene quite often too, and it's somewhat like riding a roller coaster when it's up and down the hills. Is there any grading that's going to be in there to give a better sight lines and down through there so that you have a better capability of exiting whatever drive you're coming out of? Because it is a little tough to see what's coming over those hills.
You're right, and number one, back to your question, no plans have been developed yet. And yes, it will involve a flattening of the hills, so to speak, to improve sight distance, but we don't want to make it so flat that we're going to turn it into a raceway either. Meaning we want to keep the lanes narrow and keep it confined enough to where we can somewhat control speeds.
Also, have y'all done a traffic study in regard to the increase in traffic that might be applied to that when the school is open in that area?
Yes, we did for the entire southeastern part of the city. In the Forest Hill Heights area, had a traffic study which did not include the school at the beginning, but then once it was announced that the school was going in that area, the traffic study was revised to include that traffic. So yes, meaning what's being built along the school frontage all the way to Winchester is anticipated to handle that anticipated future traffic.
How about the northern section there? Is it, you feel like there's going to be additional traffic because of the school from that?
There will be, but not an astronomical number. You know, traffic has steadily been increasing on both segments of Forest Hill for years. When the school opens, there will be somewhat of a bump at the beginning, but then it's going to level off once again. But again, it just puts the urgency on getting that segment north of Poplar done.
Thank you, Mr. Gwatney. Commissioners, any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, the subcommittee met on September 19, 2018, and recommended this item be considered at the regular Planning Commission meeting on October 2nd, pending clarification between the applicant and the city engineer on sufficient right-of-way measurements on Forest Hill Irene Road. Proposed motion is to approve the subdivision entrance gates at Maplewood PD, Winston Woods circles north and south, subject to the commission's discussion, staff comments, and conditions in the staff report and the plans and documents filed with the application.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Bennett?
No.
Ms. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes, I'm voting yes because I feel like that the applicant has met the criteria for this gate. I think it's a personal preference of the homeowners as far as the gate is there. We have other communities that have gates involved. Unfortunately, we do like to have it open so that there is some communication between all people that live in Germantown. And we would like to see them make sure that during the high peak of construction, it is held open. So I will vote yes.
Chairman Harless?
I'm voting yes. Again, I'd like to thank the developer for making the modifications that he's made and the willingness to make these modifications. I'd also like to thank the citizens for coming out and voicing their concern about safety. Safety is paramount for this community, and we take it very seriously. And the points that you've raised were raised in at least 2 different subcommittee meetings that we had in order to get to the point where we're at. So with that, I vote yes, and the proposal is approved. Thank you very much. If someone would get Alderman Owens.
You said over.
Oh. Mr. Ross, do we have the next project?
Thank you, Chairman. Next item on the agenda is item 4D, Care For at the Gateway Plan Development. Their request is the approval of an outline plan for a mixed-use project. Care For at Kirby Woods Mall is located in the West Poplar Avenue Gateway area at the corner of Poplar Avenue, Kirby Parkway, and Poplar Pike. It is in the 58-acre West Poplar Avenue key commercial area that has been part of the city's economic development strategic plan since 2012 and part of the work plan since 2013. In 2013, a small area plan was also done for this 58-acre area that includes property west of Nottoway, so the Trevure property, Westminster Townhomes, Bank of Bartlett, medical office condos, Fountain Square, and again, Care For Shopping Center. In 2014, this property was rezoned to a T5 and T6 smart code application. Prior to that, its zoning was shopping center and general commercial, so SC1 and C2. Under T5 and T6, a mixture of uses is allowed under the code as part of 23-763 in permitted uses. You can have residential, lodging, office, retail, civic uses, civil support, education, and industrial uses by warrant. This is the concept plan that came out of the Western Gateway Plan. Again, this is a concept plan that included all of the area west of Nottoway. This is Nottoway, moving west. We wanted to put this in so that you could see how their concept plan and their outline plan really tries to meet the spirited intent of what was put forward in this plan and maintain some of the drives. This is the existing conditions. Currently, this is an open shopping center. The developer has a presentation where they'll get into a little bit more of the history of this shopping center. Their proposed outline plan is divided up into a breakout of the front parcel. This area will remain an inline one-story shopping center, and the goal, as they mentioned at the Smart Code Review Committee, is to do a refacing of this front center from Swanky's moving west to Petra, and that'll be a future request, but just wanted to point that out, that area of Care For is not going to change other than facade improvements and refacing. And again, that's the inline portion of the center because it doesn't show up very well on this rendering here, but it's this inline portion starting at Swanky's and moving west to Petra Cafe on that west end. This is their conceptual site plan. The proposed uses within their concept plan as part of their outline plan proposal is for office, retail, and hotel. They have a total parking provided of 1,410 spaces. 1,275 of those spaces would be located in parking structures. Those parking structures are integrated into and shielded by these buildings on the corner of Poplar and Kirby, and along the backside, the railroad side. This is their phasing plan, which is also a requirement of the outline plan. Phase 1 would start out in the open area in their parking lot area. Phase 2 would start at the existing building, and then Phase 3 would be up against the railroad. And again, keeping that out parcel the same as it currently exists. This is the sidewalk, civic, and green space plan. That's also a requirement of the outline plan submittal, and relative to the warrant, one warrant that they're requesting as part of this. This civic space and these other smaller green spaces are included as part of their warrant request because warrants are for civic space is required under 23-758A1. Civic space is defined as an outdoor area that's dedicated to the public use, such as a park, green, square, plaza, or playground, and has to be approved by warrant within a smart code district. And the applicant, as part of their outline plan, is proposing 15,758 square feet, or just over a third of an acre in the center of the development as civic space. These are the artistic renderings that were provided as part of their initial application. They've since updated this as a part of a request from the Smart Code Review Committee. With that, I just want to briefly touch on where we are in the development process and the site plan approval process as it relates to the request in front of you tonight before I turn it over to the applicant for their presentation. The outline plan is the first step for any large mixed-use development moving forward within our smart code areas, especially when they are including civic space and private drives and infrastructure improvements at the level that this development is going to require. This is the same process that we've followed for Thornwood and Trevere coming in front of this board, as well as for other projects that are no longer moving forward at this time. Any development proposal that comes after this as part of Phase 1, Phase 2, or Phase 3 will be a part of the approvals that they may or may not receive tonight, depending on the outcome of this meeting. But the outline plan sets the pattern of the roadway network within the building and how the buildings are within the development, and then how those buildings are sited within that. So think about this as the two-dimensional approval, and then moving, so the form in terms of the site layout. And as they build upon this, moving forward with final plans as part of Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3, they would move more into the three-dimensional aspects that could include the development pro forma that they provided for office, retail, and hotel. And they'll be able to touch on some of their design vision. And as part of any subsequent application for final plan approval, they will have to provide materials, percentage of materials, percentage of transparency, colors, landscape plates, and the same amount of detail that we've required for Thornwood, Trevere, and other developments that move forward, whether they are smart code or other plan development projects as part of the plan development process that, again, begins with an outline plan that's part of the concept plan approval and the phase plan approval, and then moves into final plan approval for moving forward. So what we have in front of us tonight is an outline plan request for the development to move forward.
So, Mr. Ross, question. It's correct to assume that hotels or retail or anything that's shown tonight is only a conceptual idea and is not being approved. We're only approving the site plan, and when it comes to the buildings themselves, they'll have to come back with a final plan?
Yes, sir. What you're approving this evening is the phasing plan and the positioning of the buildings. Again, the SMART code is a form code. So we look first at the position of the buildings relative to the right-of-way and making sure that they are lining up correctly as originally laid out. And then again, as you move into more of the three-dimensional aspect of the building process that you talked about, that's when you get into more of the detailed information relative to uses. The outline plan proposed in front of you tonight does show that this can work, and they've done traffic analysis utilizing the office, the retail, and the hotel uses. But under T5 and T6, there are a litany of uses that are allowed within the code itself that they have the opportunity to use depending on the market conditions as they see those when they come in for final plan approval. And then this board would be able to consider those proposals at that point in time, take input from the public at that point. The same process that we followed for other developments.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Questions for staff? Would the applicant like to make a presentation? Good evening. If you'd state your name and address for the record.
Yes, Nelson Cannon, Vice President of Cannon, Austin Cannon. Office address is 6685 Poplar Avenue, Suite 200, Germantown, Tennessee, 38138. It's been a process, and I'm excited to be here tonight and to finally show you all what we've kind of been working on. Before I hop into the plan, I wanted to walk through. Might be helpful to share a little bit about our organization and history of the site. Cannon, Austin & Cannon has been and continues to be a local Germantown owner and developer, started by Henry Cannon, Al Austin, and Bland Cannon in 1988. Cannon, Austin & Cannon just enjoyed its 30-year anniversary and continues to grow into new markets here in Germantown and around the Mid-South. The Kirby Woods Mall was originally developed and operating before I was born in 1973, with such tenants as Gus Meyer, Casual Corner, Wolf Brothers, and Joseph A. Banks. After nearly 15 years as an enclosed mall, tenants began to struggle and the original owners sold to the current ownership group in 1989. This group had the foresight to demall the enclosed center, opening it up and adding great activity makers like Borders Books and Music, Romano's Macaroni Grill, and Swanky's. This update was very successful until our last recession, which coupled with the continuing rise of e-commerce has altered the retail landscape, especially for the brick and mortar format. Our development team has been working with the city and staff of Germantown since 2013 on this proposed project. We have had several, and let me stress several, variations of building layouts as well as uses through the 5 years. Even as late as early summer this year, we met with the Economic Development Board to discuss our project concepts at that time, but based on the market and political conditions, we feel that the proposed outline plan tonight best fits the current market conditions. I'd like now to introduce some of the team members that are here tonight. The team's head architect, Frank Butler from Dallas with Fab Studios, lead civil engineer, Robert Cochran with Allen Hoschel, traffic and parking consultant, James Collins with Kimley Horn. We have had good fortune to explore similar mixed-use projects and met with both owners and operators to see firsthand what characteristics successful ones have. One of the characteristics that stands out the most is location. Retail sites within office districts have more activity and support. Carrefour at the Gateway is a proven retail site surrounded by 9-story or higher Class A office that stays 90% leased. It has Memphis on its north and south borders, but fortunate to be in a peninsula of Germantown. Carrefour at the Gateway is unique in that it is bordered by 3 major roads as well as a large railroad right-of-way. The closest Germantown single-family home is over 3 football fields away. Another key component is connectivity. This not only refers to adjacent properties like Bank of Bartlett, Kirby Medical buildings, Fogelman Properties, Westminster Townhomes, Trevure, and Fountain Square, but also surrounding neighborhoods. A successful project has to provide connectivity. Carrefour at the Gateway is doing that not only through physical means such as crosswalks, traffic lights, turn lanes, future easements, also engaged in open communication with neighborhood heads and boards to get their input and feedback. You can see the pedestrian flow is also very important, such as sidewalks, hardscape sitting and gathering areas, and civic space. Carrefour at the Gateway has a 16,000 square foot program civic space that will have such activities as black and white movie night, ice skating, seasonal events, and live music, engaging and connecting not just properties but people. Carrefour at the Gateway is unique and is a first for the city and citizens of Germantown in many ways. This is the first large mixed-use infill redevelopment. Unlike predecessors, this site is an existing operational shopping center and has been since the early 1970s. Other sites have been greenfield sites dealing with trees, erosion, and more site grading. This development has had to navigate existing leases and infrastructure. It is also the first to propose mixed use in each of its planned buildings, not a multi-use site. This site is the first to develop under the T6 zoning. Under the T6 zoning, up to 10 stories is allowed by warrant and 8 stories by right. General uses such as residential, office, hotel, retail, and civic are all allowed. With that being said, Carrefour at the Gateway has proposed the following components based on the allowed uses. Approximately 100,000 square feet of retail, which about 30,000 is programmed right now to be restaurant, 430,000 square feet of Class A office, and 2, 120 boutique hotels, one being a minimal service and one being more full service concept. With all these uses and square footage, I realize that since citizens are concerned about traffic, we have worked under the guidelines of the Western Gateway Traffic Study, but I'd like to bring up James Collins to talk a little bit more about the traffic.
James Collins of Kimley Horn and Associates, 6750 Poplar Avenue, Suite 600. As Nelson said, we were, shortly after the Western Gateway study was done, we were hired by the city to do a traffic study for the Western Gateway area. And as part of that, there was a decision made, as we discussed this with the staff, about what sort of densities we would use for that study, because as you may remember, there were 3 different scenarios in that study for what the densities in this area might hold. And what we ended up with was one that was kind of in the middle of the 3 that we feel like was a reasonable density for that area. What you see up here in front of you now is the uses that were included for the Care For property as part of the traffic study that we did for the entire Western Gateway area. What's been proposed now is what you see there on the right, with no multifamily residential, 100,000 square feet of restaurant retail space, 443,000 square feet of office, 240 hotel rooms. The main thing that I wanted to show here was that the total trips that were anticipated to be generated under the Western Gateway study, it's about 2,000 trips less with this proposed development than what was proposed with the Western Gateway study. But when you look at the total new trips that are generated, there's actually a little bit more with this proposal. The reason for that is because of the types of uses. With the residential development that was proposed in the original, there's a lot more interaction between the retail and the office and the residential, and so you have fewer new trips that are put on the roadway than when you have a development like this where it's all retail and commercial. There have also been some questions that have been asked, I know by people, about the 2 new proposed traffic signals that were as part of this development, and those were also looked at as part of the Western Gateway study. And believe me, we did not take that lightly when we looked at that. There was a lot of people who asked a lot of hard questions about that, including me, about whether or not that would work. So we've got a lot of tools that we use to look at traffic flow when we're doing these kind of studies. And I'm going to show you a diagram here that's probably pretty confusing to a lot of people. But to simplify it, what you see here, this is the intersection of Poplar and Kirby. This is Kirby and Poplar Pike. And then this is the new proposed signal that would be in the middle at the Care For Drive that would be as part of the proposed. The red that you see is when that traffic signal is red. The green is when that traffic signal would be green for Kirby, okay? And as you can see, we have a kind of a gap in here in between where all the traffic is going north and south on Kirby Parkway, where we have an opportunity to be able to have an interruption of that traffic to allow traffic to get out from both Care For as well as the medical office building side and give those people an opportunity to get out safely. And so that's what we would do to allow that. And with a lot of the new equipment that has been now installed in the traffic signals that we have in Germantown, the new signal system that is currently being installed in the town, in the city, we have the ability to be able to regulate when that signal will turn green relative to when the other signals do, so we won't have a situation occur where you release traffic on Poplar going southbound from Kirby and then it has to stop again when it gets to the Care For Drive. We'll be able to keep that sort of thing from happening with the electronics and the equipment that we have now.
Thank you, Mr. Collins.
Yeah, I'd like to, Cameron, might need your help on the flipping the thing over. Let's see. Click that. Yeah. You minimize that. Hit the good old escape button. this down. I'll do something bad. Yeah, I'd like to show, this is a little bit of a movie. This is kind of hopefully going to give you kind of a sense of what we're trying to create here. This by no means is the exact skin of any building. Obviously, a lot of tenants, if you land an office tenant at 60,000 square feet, they're going to dictate a little bit of how they want that building to look. So this is conceptual, but it does kind of give you the quality that we're looking to put in. That red box is the Western Gateway, the entire Western Gateway area. You can see Trevere being built out on the far right. Our site's on the far left. Phase 1, obviously. Phase 2. Phase 3. This is going eastbound down Poplar, passing Fountain Square to your right. That's the new proposed traffic light. You can see the one-story retail with the facelift. That's just showing you the breakout of the uses of that building. I think Robert's cars, some of them had problems, so it looked like they're broken down the road. That's the Phase 3 hotel, and what we were thinking is that's more of the full service. Planning for the future, the commuter train. That's turf on the top with a organic green wall. Most of our restaurant interest has been along the green area. With the patios that open up onto the, like I said, the Civic and green area. That's the more of the minimal hotel, the boutique. You can see how the garage is hidden it's flanked on both sides by the building. In closing, let's see, the neighborhood meeting on September 17th was just the beginning of interaction with the community. We have since been in contact with several of the surrounding neighborhood associations, as well as individual residential and commercial property owners, either through meetings or phone calls. Some of these have written letters of support that you will find in the submittal. Following approval of the outline plan, we will continue to work with the community to address their primary concerns as we submit further plans for review by the Planning Commission, Smart Code Review and Design Review Commissions, as well as Mayor, Board, and Aldermen. The development is for the people of Germantown. It will only be successful if we listen to what they say and try to accommodate and work with the open dialogue back and forth. Thank you for allowing us to come before the board tonight and present what we think is not only a unique development, but a chance for this to become a catalyst for the community to come together and produce a district that Germantown can be proud of. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Cannon. I appreciate the video and the presentation. I'm sure the commissioners have some questions for you. Commissioners?
One quick one, I guess. Oh, he's still back there. Mr. Collins, in regard to the traffic study, the original one was done by request of the city. Is that correct, for the Western Gateway smart growth?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And this particular project works within that traffic study without, other than those daily trip charges because of the non-residential?
Right, it does, and the difference in the trips there, between the two different types of land uses are relatively minor for, what we would typically see on something like this. As things come more into focus as to exactly what the uses are going to be, how many restaurants there are going to be, those sorts of things, then a more detailed traffic study would be done for each phase as it's developed to show what the improvements are that need to be done to go along with that phase.
Okay. One question, Mr. Cannon, if I could.
Yes,
I think y'all pointed out in the subcommittee meeting that the phases at 2 and 3 that require demolition of the existing structure, that most likely that would be taken down in this totality, starting with phase 2?
Yeah, that's one of the options that we would have. Right now, we would have to move a tenant, and we've thought about already how to do that. That's one of the things that we could tear down and leave a certain portion, but the best plan, I think, is to go ahead and tear that and make it an open parking lot in the meantime before phase 3 is built.
Okay. Existing parking that you have now, based on, how many parking spaces do you have now?
I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 600. And
you're going to how many?
14.
And those accomplished by adding the parking decks, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. No further.
Thank you. Commissioners? Mr. Bennett?
In regard to the parking garages, on phase 1, there's going to be one garage. How many spaces are going to be in that garage?
I believe a little over 600.
Okay, so about half, one garage, half in the other?
Yes, sir.
Because 1,275, I think, is what I heard Cameron mention for the parking garages.
I think there was 600 and something in the phase 1, and then 700 and something in phase 2, and then there's about 140 surface parks.
And y'all are comfortable with the traffic flow into and out of your property? If it is tight, which is on Kirby, which stays.
Yes, sir. Right now, the biggest concern, obviously, is 8 and 5 with the amount of office. And we've looked at that, and I think with the traffic lights, it's going to allow we've got multiple right-in, right-outs also, and we feel comfortable with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Owens?
When is this, is the traffic signal on Kirby anticipated in phase 1?
Right, so there's two potential traffic signals that would go along with this development, and those would be determined as we see what the uses are going to be. It's very likely that the one on Kirby would probably occur as part of phase 1, and the one on Poplar would probably occur at a later phase.
2 or 3. Okay, thanks.
What about the widening of Poplar?
I'm sorry?
The widening of Poplar on the south side?
Right, so as part of the phase 1 development, as you can see, there's a little bend up there in the site plan. So they're going ahead and dedicating the right of way to provide for that widening that would in the future that would be done. One of the things that was recommended out of the Western Gateway study is that once all of the property in this area gets developed, There's a fairly significant intersection project that needs to be done at Poplar and Kirby to provide double left turns in all 4 directions in order to be able to keep everything working well. And so they're providing the widening both along their Kirby frontage as well as along their Poplar frontage that would address that.
Good. I have a couple of questions, Mr. Cannon.
Yes, sir.
Why are you wanting to make this change?
The shopping center for a long time has been the functional obsolescence. We've had it before with shopping centers, and when I can say it now because they've chosen the space, but like Container Store looked at our site for a long time, and they originally started off at 30,000 square feet, and the ceiling heights were too small, was the kind of the deal killer. And so they moved on, and we've had tenant after tenant, just the layout of these spaces, because it was an enclosed mall, a lot of these spaces are 120 feet deep, which unless you're a big box or a large mid-sized box, you can't really use that space as well. And so it's not only functional obsolescence, but it's also, we just feel like the market's moving away from these mid and big size boxes more towards the smaller, I wouldn't say mom and pops, but it's almost like the mom and pops.
Good. You mentioned that you've talked to the residents. How many meetings have you had with the residents?
We've met with...
attendance did you have, and what's the result?
Yes, sir, I've got notes on those. We've met with Poplar Estates twice, and had very good positive results with Poplar Estates. We have a good open dialogue with Ed Nickel, the president, and that board, and I feel like that we can continue talking with them. I also feel Green Trees in Memphis and Kirby Woods, both we've been in touch with. We met with Green Trees president Don Timmons last week, and Kirby Woods, we've talked to Missy Rayner, who is the head, and Missy said that there wasn't a whole lot of chatter, so until the population for the board meeting got a little bit bigger, she said just to wait. And English Meadows we met with last night, and had I'd probably say the most, we probably had 15, 16 people at that meeting, and I thought it went real well. There was a little bit more kickback, I think, at that meeting than any of the other ones, but I think I hit their concerns and I wrote them down, and we'll address those.
Good. Mr. Cannon, I encourage you, first, I applaud you for having at least 3 meetings with the residents, and I encourage you to keep that up.
Absolutely.
Input from the residents is key. I have a question for...
Mr. Chairman, if I could follow up on that question.
Sure.
About the residents, what about Fountain Square? You didn't mention that.
Fountain Square I have talked to. We set up a meeting for October 16th. Jackie McLeod is the president over there, and I've been in touch with Carrie Satterfield through Faith Management. She wants it more open where they can walk back and forth and more connectivity is kind of what she said over the text messaging and stuff like that. So I plan on tackling that more October 16th.
I understand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I understand you've had some positive feedback from some of the landowners in the area.
Yes, sir. You know, it's funny, you think back when the Lawrence Group did their presentation and they were saying how, you know, you can develop these things individually or you can kind of come together and unite and just kind of look at this thing as a total district area. And I feel like that we are definitely moving in that direction. We've had good talk with Robert Fogelman and Ray Gill. The Medical Plaza I haven't gotten in touch with, but Bank of Bartlett we've had a lot of talks with also.
Good. Mr. Ross, a question for you. Can you talk a little bit about the Western Gateway and the vision for this whole area and why we're going that way?
So, Mr. Harless, I briefly touched on it, but the idea behind the Western Gateway was to better utilize the existing conditions that we had left. This area, prior to the Smart Code application, was zoned predominantly for commercial, shopping center, and office use. The Trevier
underlying zoning before the T4R and T5 application was for a secondary Old Germantown district. But with Trevure moving forward with T5 and the creation of new office space within that, new Class A office space, you've got the residential that is in Westminster, the Bank of Bartlett corner and the medical office condos. As Mr. Cannon mentioned, the existing shopping center that's now looking for its third evolution, going from an enclosed mall to an open mall, to looking to add some mix of uses to it, and then considering how Fountain Square can be part of this redevelopment effort in the future. We wanted to look at the highest and best use, and this is option B that came out of the plan that Mr. Collins referred to, which is what we asked Kimley Horn to do their traffic impact modeling on, because we feel that this is the set of uses in terms of what he put forward that would best reflect what we look at as the market. And so that would be a middle of the road redevelopment, but still allowing for mid-rise. You know, even with T6, you have the option to go 10 stories by warrant. You look at the existing conditions and the context that's provided within Memphis, and you've got the Forum building that's just over 12 stories. You've got IP4 just up the road, and then the International Paper headquarters and those office towers. And Mr. Cannon showed a larger context map that talked about the Crescent Center and Triad and the redevelopment that Boyle is doing. And Poplar Avenue corridor from 240 going into the Western Gateway in Germantown is really poised to be something akin to Peachtree in the Atlanta area and that Buckhead area. And Germantown wanted to make sure that we had the redevelopment opportunities and that enabling legislation in place to allow for the next evolution of care for redevelopment of the intersection of Kirby and Poplar, and how we can be a part of the Poplar Avenue story within office and Class A space and mixed-use development.
Thank you. A couple of other questions. The impact of this project to the property tax rolls, what would that be?
So part of the analysis with the Western Gateway Plan included a review of property tax generation as it related to moving forward with the existing conditions, and these are approximate numbers. I don't have those in front of me, but existing conditions, if it were to continue to be built out, the city would expect to receive around $300,000 in property tax revenue for all the property taxes in this area. When you looked at option B, you moved up to about 3 times that into just shy of $1 million in property tax revenue. And then if we were to go all in and a full whole hog redevelopment of this 60 acres, the city could expect to receive north of $2 million in property tax revenue generation.
Will there require infrastructure improvements in this area other than the widening of Poplar, which is going to be handled, I think, by the developer and the traffic lights?
There is a project that has been designed is within the capital improvements plan for construction for sewer upgrades to this area. That sewer upgrade project would allow for the commercial projects, both existing and redevelopment of commercial projects, to have their own line and not be part of the residential line. So it would take the pressure off of the existing residential sewer infrastructure and allow for the commercial developments to have their own line and allow for the residential to have their own line. So it is a planned upgrade, and we hope to go for construction in either by the end of the calendar year or the beginning of calendar year 2019.
What's the estimated cost of that new sewer?
Within the capital improvement budget that was approved by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen on at the end of or beginning budget year, July 1st, 2018, we had budgeted $2 million to come out of the utility fund for that project.
Very good. Thank you. Questions from the commissioners? If not, do we have anyone in the audience who would like to speak? Just a minute, please, ma'am. Ma'am, just a minute, please. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this project? Just bear with me. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in opposition to this project or have a question? If you'll come forward, please. Kind of have to bear with us that we have a formal way of doing this. If you'll come to one of the microphones and state your name and address, please.
My name is Elaine Lurie. I live at 1957 Kirby Parkway. I live right across the street from Carrefour. I couldn't live any closer if I wanted to, okay? And I think the project looks lovely, except for one thing. I cannot believe someone would like to put a traffic light on the strip between Poplar Pike, on Kirby Parkway, between Poplar Pike and Poplar Avenue. It's 1 block long. If you take that little street, say between 7:30 and 9:30 in the morning, and you want to go to Kroger's, you might sit there for 3 lights. If you take it between 2:30 and 4:30 or 5:30 in the afternoon, when the school buses run, you might sit there for 3 or 4 lights to get anywhere. And if you put a light at that entrance to Carrefour, and you jam up those cars trying to get on that one little strip that's not very long, you are going to have the most horrendous traffic jam that's going to block traffic way in beyond the light that's there at Kirby Parkway and Poplar Pike. And it's going to create the most horrendous traffic problem that you have ever seen. It's not long enough, that street is not long enough to have a traffic light on it. So, I mean, the project's fine, but there is no way to have a traffic light on that street.
Mrs. Murray, thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak in opposition to this project? Seeing none?
Justin Terry at 1706 Ridge Oak Place. And I also am concerned about traffic. I know we're not really discussing any sort of, building height or anything like that at all. I feel like there'd be a lot more opposition if we were. But just starting off with the traffic in general, I agree, like that's a really, the 2 lights that are there now on Kirby, at Kirby and Poplar, as well as Kirby and Poplar Pike, they're already on the simultaneous schedule to they both turn green. You can go ahead and, move forward at the same time. And, even with that though, it is really jammed up, and if you had another 3rd one there, I just feel like you would be doing really good to get from the 1st one to the 2nd one before you'd stop again. And, my neighbor over here, we work all the way downtown, so it's a pain coming from our house to all the way to, downtown and everything and coming back. Even the extra one on the Poplar side, I've lived there for 6 years, and I've seen at least 3 lights come up. You got International, the one at International Place popped up, the Trevor light popped up. So it's really getting jammed up. I really enjoy the serenity of the neighborhood and being out past, close enough to the city, 2 miles away from 240. Got construction going on there. It's already kind of a mess. But, it's great living, just beyond that, but close enough to be able to function and, go into the city and everything. But, we really should be extremely considerate of adding any additional stoplights, and especially that one on Little Kirby, that spot of Kirby there. It's going to be a nightmare. So I really appreciate you guys getting my input. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to this project? Commissioners, do we have any further questions?
No, ma'am, make a comment
Sorry,
or 2.
Mrs. Hicks.
I appreciate the presentation by the applicant. I had questions before that, and I appreciate the opportunity to see what your vision could be, because like the height of the buildings, I have high expectations for this. This should be extremely unique for the region, and I think that's what you're shooting for. I originally wanted to see more green space, but I'm thinking maybe we can count the roof. If you've got turf roofs and ice skating, those kind of things on your radar, I think you had turf on the roof. Yes, okay. Those are the kinds of things that really make it unique. I know that may not end up what it is, but if that's what you're considering, I like the creativity that you're showing us could happen on this site, and I would be supportive of that. I like that you've hidden the garage between the buildings. There's just some things that I like, and I'm excited about your project.
Other questions, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Mr. Bennett.
Just to make a comment as well, I'm excited about the project. I think it's the perfect location for this type of project. I am concerned about the traffic, but I know you are as well, because your project's not going to succeed if people can't get in and out of your project. So I know you'll make sure that you've got a way to get people in and out. I think the two traffic lights you propose are going to really help. That's going to give you some additional access, because getting across that railroad track is kind of difficult in Germantown. We've not the only project where we've had that barrier that you have to deal with. I do hope that as we move along, I know it's a concept plan. I like what you've proposed, the concept that you have. The garage is hidden, and as Commissioner Hicks said, the turf, it's not necessary, but I mean, I understand the green space, and you're looking to add more green space by using, a rooftop that's, very creative, and I think that'll be successful. But the building footprints and the types of uses that you're looking for, we'd hope you'd stay true to that, instead of coming back and say, well, we've decided we're going to do this and that. I know it's going to be dictated by what tenants are looking to go in there, but the concept that you've got is really, I'm excited about it, and I think it's, like I said, it's going to be a great use for that part of Germantown. It's an access point to the city. People are going to see that as the first thing they see when they come in from heading east, and so I commend you for taking such a bold step in that manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other comments, questions? Alderman Owens?
Just a comment. I think I too share, I guess, the concerns about, especially about the traffic signal on Kirby there, and I guess, Mr. Collins, I'd like possibly to sit down with you between now and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and have you sort of fill me in or enlighten me a little bit more about what would be the trigger points for that, I guess, being allowed, being warranted, if you will, and sort of understand how that would work in with the phasing. As an aside, I grew up literally in the 5th and 6th, 7th grade, walking up to Kirby Woods Mall, and I appreciate your comment about functional obsolescence. I mean, I think if we're not growing, we're dying, and this, to me, it's just an outline plan, but your concept and what you've presented tonight, I think it does meet the vision of the Western Gateway, and could be something very special.
Thank you, Alderman.
Mr. Chairman, just a brief comment. I do appreciate how the city has gone forward looking at the property that is in our gateway that is there as commercial now, and how we can improve that and bring it back from really the style that was back in the 70s and 80s to the current style. I do put some trust in my engineers when it comes to traffic studies, and I understand that there is always concern, but once again, Poplar and Kirby and all of them are major streets, and all this would have to be coordinated. I do think it needs to be done as far as the project is brought upon, and not as it, until it is needed, I should say. But it is an exciting project. So unfortunately, we can't make it live, work, and play as our original concept was, but I think this concept certainly addresses what we need as our Western Gateway, and really, hopefully, and I know the developer and his people, and I think they do design and bring about quality projects, and I think it will be maintained that way, and it'd be for future growth as far as Germantown is concerned, would bring in the revenue we need to keep our schools and our cities functioning in the proper manner in which we want them to.
Thank you, Commissioner. With that, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, the Smart Code Review Committee met on September 19, 2018, and recommended the application be considered by the Planning Commission at the October 2nd, 2018 meeting, subject to the subcommittee discussion, staff comments, and the staff report, and the plans and documents filed with this application. Letters of recommendation from the DRC and ED representatives, which were included in the report. I make the motion to approve the outline plan for Care 4 at the Gateway Plan Development located at 6685 Poplar Avenue, the southwest corner of Poplar Avenue and Kirby Parkway, subject to the Commission's discussion, staff comments, and conditions as contained in the staff report and documents and plans submitted with the application.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Ms. Hicks?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes.
Chairman Harless?
I too vote yes. I think this is a good project for the city. It's based on our 2030 forward plan, and it continues to support the need to keep our taxes low and keep our city safe. So I vote yes with this concept plan. So the motion is approved. We wish you the very best of luck.
Warrant.
With that motion approved, we now go to the warrant. We have one warrant.
Hold on, let me get there, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve a warrant from section 23-758A1 hyphen T6, civic space is an outdoor area dedicated for public use such as a park, a green, a square, a plaza, or a playground. Civic space may be approved by warrant in any smart code zoning district. The applicant is providing 15,758 square feet in the center of this development. We make that in the form of a motion, Your Honor.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Ms. Hicks?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes, I've often thought that this type of warrant is, for some reason, shouldn't be a warrant. Just what the developer's doing is providing open spaces, which is what we want to see in our larger, more dense developments. So I think it's a product of good site design and good urban design, and I vote yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Vote yes, and in reference to what Alderman Owens said, I think in our executive session, we mentioned to staff that we would like to see that modified and changed to where it's not a warrant, because it is what we want. So looking forward to hearing from the staff on that.
Chairman Harless?
And I also vote yes, and the warrant is approved. Again, best of luck on your project. Stay in touch with the citizens. Thank you. If there's no other business, we stand adjourned. Thank you.